be unknown, nameless.
This is 5-4 Sierra, two-man unit on the porch.
A shadow. It's not about the glory or the praise. MARSOC is not for those who need a pat on the back. It's for Marines who can fight as effectively with their mind as with their rifle. It's for Marines whose will to succeed doesn't waver in the face of the unknown.
Moving to breach.
When we're looking for Marines to come into MARSOC, I think the thing that we're looking for is somebody that's hungry. I think that a certain individual is attracted to this job and this lifestyle because it's not just a job, it is a lifestyle.
That to obviously be tough mentally and physically, but I think that's something that kind of goes without saying. Everyone expects that, but another big thing is people need to have initiative. A great deal of initiative. There's not people around telling you what to do. You have to, on your own, go and do things that need to be done. You're expected to know your job extremely well, without doubt, and you're also expected to know everyone around your job.
Might be you and two other guys from your team working at some embassy somewhere, and the fact that you have that weight on your shoulders as a sergeant is, to me, worth it, that you actually get to make a difference and you get to see what that difference is at the end of the day.
Special operations team, there's been many instances where, that team may be alone and unafraid in an environment where you really don't have a close backup. The nearest friendly unit, may be hundreds of miles away, and that nearest friendly unit may not even be a U.S. unit. So these guys, they have to take care of everything for themselves.
It's extremely rewarding, but it's extremely rewarding because of how much you put into it. Like everything in life, you're going to get out what you put in. You have to put in a great deal of time and effort, like years of your life, to get into that point. But because you have worked so hard and put so much into it, it is that rewarding.
MARSOC is a mindset where accomplishing the mission is the highest honor.
5, 4, 3, 2. First room secure. Last room, possible jackpot. Jackpot.
Soft Stories Live features guests who are often decades removed from an operation, so the stories are told as they remember them and are not cleared for release by the Department of Defense. All content discussed is unclassified and/or publicly released by the DoD prior to this broadcast. Our intent is to share these moments in history as experienced by the special operators who were there.
Please don't tell me I'm too old to sign up. I get enough of that at home. But hey, welcome, gentlemen, to Soft Stories Live, where we explore the history of special operations as told by the warriors that lived it. Today's episode covers the birth of MARSOC, Part 2. Today we have an all-star lineup, and I'm not joking, we have an all-star lineup. This is a dream team that if I were ever going to pick one, I'd pick this team. So thanks, gentlemen, for taking time from your busy schedules to help us tell the MARSOC story. Today we're honored to have the two commanders who actually formed the unit, passed the colors, and activated the command we know today as the United States Marine Forces Special Operations Command, or MARSOC. There's so much cross-chatter, innuendo, and competing narratives surrounding the formation of MARSOC that we're humbled to actually have access to some of the high-level ground truth. Today we have General Retired Doug Brown, who was the commander of USSOCOM at the time MARSOC was formed, and Lieutenant General Retired Dennis Hejlik, then a Major General, who was the very first MARSOC commander. Our narrator for today is Major General Retired Mark Droopy Clark, who served as a Marine at U.S. Air Force Special Operations Command, flying the MH-53 Pavlo. He served as the Chief of Staff for USSOCOM and also commanded MARSOC in 2012. Now, the formation of MARSOC is an intriguing story that we wanted to tell from day one of our podcast series. So as I began digging into the MARSOC story, I quickly found that it was extremely complex. And I realized that we had to break it into actual two parts because there was so much to cull through. Now, much of it I understood. Based on missions, resources, end strengths, authorities, funding, and views from the foxhole that was occupied by the storyteller at that particular moment in time. and that's important to remember. In the first podcast, we looked at the early days of the Marine SOCOM Board and the Marine Corps Special Operations Command Detachment 1, not to be confused with MARSOC. The first podcast was largely based on action officer level observations within the Pentagon, and I actually felt respect and a bit of sympathy for the two young action officers, a young field grade commissioned officer and a young staff NCO, who one day were making coffee and organizing PowerPoint briefs, and the next day they're tasked to develop a plan for a U.S. Marine Corps Special Operations Unit. So thankfully, both of them being Marines, they rolled up their sleeves, they did their homework, they expanded their network, they worked way outside their comfort zone, and they helped produce the initial plan for Marine Corps Special Operations Command Detachment 1, also referred to as Det 1. Now, much of the first podcast dealt with logistics, resources, task organization, training standards, building relationships, conducting meetings, and proofing a concept. It took the story through Det 1's first deployment to Afghanistan to a point in time just shy of activating MARSOC. So today we'd like to hear the rest of that story, unvarnished, gentlemen, if you please. So welcome all. It's great to see you guys again. I've never told you guys this, but many of you were role models and helped shape the man that I've become. So I wanted to say thank you. And thanks again for your continued service and all that you do. Now, Major General Clark, the mic and the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Sergeant Major. I appreciate that. Good day, everyone. And I'd like to thank the Global SOF Foundation for putting this on and really allowing these stories to be told. I think they're really instrumental to the SOF community. And today, I think, is going to be very enlightening for everybody. I think it's going to reveal some things that people didn't know. I think it's also going to clear up some information or misinformation. And we certainly got the two great leaders that were instrumental in that. And it wasn't an easy thing. There was a lot of staff, headquarters, kung fu fighting, jujitsu moves going on. And it was because of their leadership, their patience, their vision, perseverance, and really the guts to stay the course is the real reason why MARSOC became MARSOC and is still around today and became what it is. And so we thank those two gentlemen for that. You know, you kind of alluded to this, Rick. You know, it's interesting how things happen and people are in certain places at a certain time and how that comes into effect later on. You know, so in 2001, when General Jones and General Holland, you know, signed that MOA, you know, General Brown was involved with, you know, the different staff functions and working the Marine Corps and SOCOM boards and things like that. And I think that helped prepare him for later. And then 2002, when General Hejlik became the chief of staff, and then later at the SOUP, and General Brown as deputy commander, you know, that established that relationship, which plays out later. And then 2004 of Det 1 and General Brown, now the commander at SOCOM. And then 2005, when the SecDef directs, you know, the stand-up of MARSOC, and all these people that were in places earlier come back into play now. And so it's, I think that was really instrumental in the success of standing up MARSOC. So I've got 4 guided questions that I'm going to ask General Brown, General Hejlik, and then we'll open it up for questions later. So General Brown, you know, the first question really is, and there's a few pieces to it we talked about before, and but if you could share with us, you know, how you were first notified of the idea to stand up MARSOC, what happened next, your involvement and with whom, and how you came about with the idea of what MARSOC could and should be, you know, what that napkin looked like as you drew on it, what guidance you received, what guidance you gave, and what was your interaction with the Commandant of the Marine Corps. And then lastly, how did General Hejlik become involved with this? Over to you, sir.
Well, thanks. And thanks to the Global SOF Foundation, Stu Braden, Rick Lamb, and Randy Anderson, Chelsea, thanks for doing all the work to put this on. And Droopy, thanks for being the moderator today. And it's great to see my old friend, General Halek, on here as well to correct all the errors I made. So let me start by talking about the SOCOM Marine Corps Board real quick. A lot of the information I've seen makes it sound like the SOCOM Marine Corps Board was a unique function. It wasn't. We had boards with every one of the services. The one that made the Marine Corps board different was the fact that we had no component for Marines, but we still had an Army board, a Navy board, an Air Force board meet annually. The way they worked real quick was the staff would come up with the issues. They would tee them up to the commanders. We'd agree to which ones we'd talk about. And then we would have the meeting with the commandant in this case and the commanding general of SOCOM. These went on every year. As a 1-star, when I was the J578 down at SOCOM, one of my functions was putting on that board and then taking the milestones that came out of it and going back up to the Marine Corps headquarters and to SOCOM, and they would come down to our place and we would work through all those issues. And there were a lot of issues. It didn't matter which service you were working with. So this one that stood up, Det 1, was not a unique one. What was unique that came out of it was this agreement to have the Marines stand up a little detachment and put them in, under the SEALs. So going from the board, I then was the JSOC commander and the USSOC commander. And to put all this in context, I think it's important to understand that when I took over USSOC, we were about 230 18 series Green Berets short. And that's a rough number. I can't remember the exact number, but it's over 200. So we had about 20 18s that we couldn't deploy. In fact, I was even told, why don't you just take those because you can't fill them. Why don't you take those slots and do something else with them? But we didn't. So then 9/11 happened, and the center of gravity for the global became the Green Beret and the 18 and the Special Forces 18. And then we just couldn't get enough of them. And the requests kept coming in. And as the war went on, in one case, we got a request for 24 18s. We just physically didn't have them. So what in fact happened was that they would request these 18s. I couldn't provide them. Then they would go to the SecDef. I'd go up and brief the SecDef, which I briefed on operations just about every couple of weeks anyway. And so every time I went up there, I would talk to Mr. Rumsfeld about the initiatives we had going on to try and save the Green Berets we did have that were critical at the time and to grow new ones. Of course, we started the 18 X-ray program, and I won't go into that, but that's another great decision that General Boykin came up with that turned into be a great decision to grow the 18s. We did not have the money to grow the Special Warfare Center in schools so that we could increase the throughput, which is what we needed to do, and eventually did do without changing the standards. So we tried other initiatives. So we came up with an incredible bonus package to keep the SF operators on the A teams right at the key time when they were most experienced and we need them. We got that through Congress. That's another discussion that was very, very difficult, but all this was intended to keep the Special Forces 18s. And at the time, if you'll remember, we were losing people to Blackwater and to the other civilian forces that were deploying to the battlefield, the contract forces. So during one of those meetings, and there's a clear distinction between what we were doing with Det 1, I would tell you that there's no direct link that caused us to look at Det 1 and say, this is a great idea, we ought to expand them to a component. That didn't happen. Det 1 was doing its thing, going fine. I went out and visited them. I was the deputy. I was in all the boards. I was in all those discussions. I was the deputy before that. But we had these Marines working with the Navy SEALs. And had we built that as a component, and I think people ought to think about it, that would have turned WARCOM into a maritime component as opposed to two separate service components. And that would have not been a good idea. So what in fact happened in one of our briefings to Secretary Rumsfeld, we were done with the briefing, and Mr. Rumsfeld looked at me and said, have you thought about taking Marines? And the truth was that we had not thought of expanding Det 1, and Det 1 was kind of doing its own thing at that time. It had kind of leveled off and going on. And so we just said, so I said, no, but we'll take a look at it. So I went directly down to see the Commandant, who was Mike Hejlik, who could not have been more supportive. Great individual, great Commandant. And we went down, and what we did was put together a couple teams, staff teams. and the SOCOM team and a Marine Corps team, and they would meet. And I got to tell you, the issues were huge. People that think this kind of stuff is easy are crazy. You have two separate cultures, but you also have separate policies, assignment pay policies, promotion policies. So all those have to be kludged together if you're going to build a new component. What in fact happened was, and I just saw the snowflake the other day. I wish I could find it. If I do, I'll certainly show it to anybody that wants to, that came from Mr. Rumsfeld, because our first shot out of the barrel was, why don't we just get some foreign military training teams and put them in the FID role? Because we were doing our FID operations down in Colombia and South America and in West Africa. And so I was having to take A teams directly out of Colombia and put them right onto the battlefield because we just didn't have enough A teams. So if I could take that burden of the FID missions, which Marines do very, very well and always have, we could release those A teams to come back. And it also allowed me to have continuity of command because I would just be deploying Army SOF guys to the SOF. So all that sounded like a good plan. Wasn't a good plan. Secretary Rumsfeld sent me a snowflake that said, well, I agree with the thought, it's just not aggressive enough. It's not going to solve the problem. And he was totally right. So we went back to the drawing boards. And quite frankly, what was happening is we were just at a staff impact. All good people, no animosity, everyone cooperating, trying to figure out how we were going to skin this cat. But I could see it was grinding to a halt. So as time went on and we weren't progressing, on a Sunday morning, I went in my office, I took out a big butcher block and a felt tip pen, and I said, what do I need at SOCOM? Well, the first thing I needed was foreign military training teams. So I drew a headquarters, because you're going to have a headquarters to command and control all this. And I made a line and block diagram, and I put a battalion of foreign military training teams. What's the second thing I need? Well, I need additional direct action forces. At this time, the MUSOCs were sailing. And as all the Marines know, there was a very small detachment of people that trained them in some SOF unique skills before they got on board. And then they went with the moniker MUSOC. So I thought, well, why don't I do this? We will take that training detachment and move it into our new component, the MARSOC. They will be the people that run assessment, selection, and training, much like our Special Warfare Center and School does in the Army. And so that will be the guys that do that. And we'll make a deal with the Marines that says, this is how we see it. If we'll bring them in, we'll train these direct action forces and then put them back on the MU. And they will then be SOCOM trained, organized, and equipped forces that have SOF unique skills, SOF unique equipment, and then the MUSOC will be a real MUSOC. And they'll be trained by the Marines in the training detachment. So those two were really no big surprise, pretty much what everybody thought the MUSOC would look like. But the third one was, the third leg of it was, what do I really need that I don't have in special operations enough of, or if I do have, I don't have enough of? The first one was radio reconnaissance. The Marines are known to have world-class radio reconnaissance. They've always had it. I mean, I worked with them in Korea and other places around the world. They're good at it. I wanted those guys. And if you remember, for all those special forces guys, previous to this, we had taken all the SOD-A teams out of the company level, I think, in SF, and moved it to battalion or battalion to group, I can't remember. So the SOD-A SIGINT guys, we did not have enough of them. We had taken down some of the numbers of SOD-A. I needed Marine Corps radio reconnaissance. So that was the first one. What else did I need? I need dog teams. I need humaners. I needed EOD personnel. So I made this what I would call a special troops or special Marines battalion that had all this kind of capability that could not only augment the MARSOC, but could augment all of SOCOM and where we were short those kind of specific skills. And then, of course, you need a leg that is the support leg that has the logistics piece and all. I then tore off that piece of butcher block On Monday morning, I gave it to my staff. They made it into one PowerPoint slide. I flew to Washington, D.C., and went to see General Mike Hejlik, who was the commandant. He totally agreed, liked it. I don't remember there were any numbers on it. It was, we're going to let the staffs figure out what number of those people will move over from the Marine Corps. If you remember, the Marine Corps at this time was authorized 205,000 people. So this worked out very well for growing that force structure. You could move these people over and continue to grow the Marine force structure. And so what in fact happened, the one question that General Hejlik asked me was, why don't you take some aviation and take some HH-53s? And if you remember at the time, we had just started moving the Pueblos out of the command. We had a pretty good aviation plan. And the main people that would be using those helicopters, in our opinion, or my opinion, was the direct action guys. They're already on the MEU. I get them for free. I don't have to pay for them. I really don't want to pay for them. So at that time I said, no, for now, we will not take a Marine Corps aviation squadron. And he agreed. We went straight down to see Mr. Rumsfeld's office, told him we'll come back with the plan in writing, but this is what it'll look like. He gave us the thumbs up and said, good to go, get it done. We came back, gave the staff those taskers, and both the Marine Corps and the SOCOM staff now had direct guidance for building the first ever MARSOC, which, by the way, I would end and turn it back over to you, is I then took that piece of butcher block and tore it off. I wrote what it was and signed my name and dated it and folded up and put it in the safe down at SOCOM. Just this week, I called them and said, hey, can we find that piece of paper in the safe? It will be the defining document for the building of the MARSOC. I just got a note from them. They haven't found it, but they're going to continue to look. And quite frankly, if we could ever find it, it would be great to turn it over to the MARSOC and let them have it for their history records. That's my recollection of exactly how the MARSOC got formed.
General Brown, thank you. That's insightful. And I think for all of us, you brought up some information that a lot of us weren't aware of. And so anyway, thank you for your comments there and your insight. For General Halek, kind of along the same lines, where were you at this time? And then how did you first get notified and brought into the mix of this thing called MARSOC? And what was the guidance given to you by General Brown and by the Commandant? What were your thoughts at this point? And what guidance did you give to your staff, and what limited staff you had at that point? Over.
Hey, thanks, General Clark, and for all of you, thanks for having us. This is great to do this, so we really appreciate it. So thank you. Interesting listening to General Brown, and of course, General Brown and I have known each other since 2002. My first thought is, well, I didn't know any of this stuff. So, I mean, that's a heck of a way to start, but that's really the truth. So I was just coming out of Iraq as a deputy MEF commander and 1st Brigade commander, and I was en route to Quantico, Virginia to take over Training and Education Command. So it was the 29th of October, and the time frame is about the same what General Brown was talking about. And I got a call from the G3 of the Marine Corps, if you will. And he said, hey, the decision's been made to stand up MARSOC, so you need to get down to Camp Lejeune on Monday and start going to work. Well, the truck moving our goods into housing at Quantico had just left about 3 hours ago. And it was my wife's birthday, so we were out to dinner. So over the phone, I said, I'll tell you what, sir, that sounds great, but I'm going to give the phone to my wife, and you tell her she's got to pack back up Monday and come on down to Lejeune. He goes, never mind, take your time, take as much time as you want. So I went down to Lejeune, and my thought process at the time was, it wasn't even a, mission set. It was, where do you get the people? Where do you get the money? Where's your headquarters? What does the headquarters look like? Where do I get my guidance from General Brown? What do I get from General Hejlik? All those things are roiling through your mind. And for the first 3 months, when we were back and forth between Camp Lejeune and Quantico, I had a very small staff. my G3 and chief of staff at the time was the commanding officer of the Foreign Military Training Unit, which at the time belonged to 4th MEP. And General Brown's exactly right. We eventually rolled those over. So it wasn't one of those things where, I sat down with my staff first because I really need to get some guidance from General Hejlik and General Brown. So the first person I went to see really was the G3 for the Marine Corps. And what he told me was exactly right for at least the first year. He goes, hey, Halek, you got 6 months. You are the darling of the Marine Corps. After 6 months, no one's going to give a crap. So you better get it all done in 6 months. So I thought, well, that's typical Marine Corps guidance. So I went and saw General Hejlik, and he was very, very supportive. But at the same time, he goes, hey, look, you're not going to get a lot of support, and you're going to get pushback from every corner on the Marine Corps side. And he was absolutely right. No one really wanted to do this. As General Brown said, I mean, we were told to do this, although we should have seen this coming since 1987, and we just didn't. And General Gray and General Kelly, 2 commandants who were instrumental in moving us towards there, of course, with the MARSOC and then the MUSOC. So it's one of those things that should not have been a surprise to the Marine Corps, but it really didn't matter because there was a lot of resistance for people and money and equipment and any type of support. So General Hejlik pretty much told me, he goes, look, you've got a clean sheet of paper. You get with the Marine Forces Atlantic, which at the time I couldn't really figure out. And then you get with General Brown down at SOCOM, and you figure out how you're going to do this. So the next person I went and saw was Marine Forces Atlantic. And the reason that I went and saw him is at the time, he really had the 4th Marine Expeditionary Brigade. They were OPCON to him. And so that was where we were going to get our staff. I got no guidance from him. The only thing I really heard from him and his defense was Marine Corps didn't want to do this. No one really wants to do this. So if you really have some problems, you can come and see me. But other than that, you're on your own. So then I went and saw General Brown, and I spent, gosh, I don't know, I guess the whole afternoon with General Brown. And I told him, flat out, I said, I've got some really issues. Don't have a headquarters, don't have any money, really don't have any people. I think we're going to get the Foreign Military Training Unit, that battalion that will form one of the nucleus of MARSOC, but I'm even not so sure about that. And he goes, okay, well, look, he goes, what I want you to do is don't worry about a mission set now. I want you to come up with the tasks you think are appropriate for MARSOC. And he goes, I really do want you to concentrate on foreign internal defense with FMTU. He goes, yeah, direct actions there, but he goes, I don't want that to be a priority of yours right now. He goes, also look at intel preparation of the battlefield. And that was the first time I'd heard about, radio battalion could be a player because like General Brown said, they're very good at what they do. When it comes to intel prep of the battlefield, they're, one of the best around. So with that, and he said, oh, by the way, if you need any money, just let me know. So I went back up to Quantico, talked to the staff. The staff was, like I said, it was 3 people at the time, a colonel, a lieutenant colonel, a major, and a driver. So, I mean, we had a huge staff. So we sat there and we came up with tasks. Again, we weren't looking at a mission set now, we looked at tasks. And the first thing we decided that would really fit the Marine Corps is, yeah, we should work foreign internal defense with Foreign Military Training Unit, who again was part of the 4th Marine Expeditionary Brigade. And then we'll take a look at direct action, although that'll be secondary. Let's take a look at humanitarian assistance, something the Marine Corps and all the services do anyway. Then let's take a look at security operations, and then civil affairs, although that didn't come about till quite a bit later. And then let's look at the special reconnaissance. We've had a pretty good inkling, although it wasn't forthright, that the 2 battalions that would form MARSOC would be 1st Force Reconnaissance out of Camp Pendleton and 2nd Force Reconnaissance out of Camp Lejeune. You can imagine how well that was going over with the reconnaissance outfits at the time. It was not. It really wasn't, and that was a struggle for us for quite some time. So the guidance was come up with the task first. Once we thought we had the task right, I went back to General Brown, he said, look, Denny, the only thing I don't want you to look at right now is really any special activities, and put civil affairs on the back burner. So we did that. It made a lot of sense. And then we started working our mission. And what I told the guys when we did our mission, I said, hey, look, mission sets can change. We get into this all the time where you come up with a mission for a unit, not a combat exercise or combat operation, but for a unit, and we think it's got to stay that way. Well, that's not the case at all, because a unit morphs as they grow. We were combat irrelevant at the time. We all know that. So I said the mission set can change. So we did that. It was a very simple mission. Got it approved by General Brown. It was basically, COCOM to SOCOM, in support of SOCOM with foreign internal defense. And, that was basically it. It wasn't much more than that, because we knew that we could change that and we could morph it as we went along. So the first, I would say, General Clark, the first 3 months were extremely difficult. I have to give General Amos a lot of credit. He was 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force Commander at the time, 2 MEF. And when I checked in with him, because I knew we were going down there somewhere, I checked with him and he goes, hey, Denny, I'm going to give you the 3 wings of the MEF headquarters that are now occupied by 4th MEB. And I want you to pick and choose your staff out of 4th MEB. And then they were going to not dismember, but they were going to fold the flag on 4th MEB. And also with the Foreign Military Training Unit with Colonel Petronzio and his guys. So that was the core right away. I did tell him that it looked like I was going to take his 2nd Force Reconnaissance Battalion, and I got the cold stare of stink eye. And then he kind of smiled and he goes, I already knew that. I knew it was coming. In the same thing, I called the 1st MEF commander right after that and told him the same thing. Dead silence for about 20 seconds. And then there was a little chuckle and he goes, yeah, I saw that coming. So that was the easy part, working with the commanders. And I discovered this as I went along. Commanders aren't the problem. They really aren't, because the commanders all want to work together to make sure that a unit succeeds. Where the conflict arises is when you get down into the staff officer level. Majors and lieutenant colonels are great because they do all the work for you, but they also can be one hell of an obstacle when they want to be. And as General Brown said, there was not just cultural issues, there was money issues, there was equipment issues, there was logistics issues, there was facilities issues. Who pays for all of that? MFP 11 money out of SOCOM or MFP 2 money out of the Marine Corps. So that was a constant running battle to start with. So I guess the only question you said is, what was my thought when I first got the word? My thought was, how in the hell do you do this? Just a little bit of background. The only reason I really was the MARSOC commander is because the relationship I had with General Brown. I spent 2 years in SOLIC, right as a brand new brigadier, and then General Jones with General Holland. And I think really, he said, hey, I'd like to send you a chief of staff, and he's going to be a Marine 1-star. So I went down there. So that was my background. And then, of course, General Brown was the deputy, and I had a great working relationship with him because as a chief of staff in an outfit like that, it was really, I think General Brown, you have to, was it soup support? Was that what it was called? And there was a colonel in there, great guy, but frankly, he wasn't a chief of staff. And I think you have to grow up, and there's no offense meant here at anybody. I think you have to grow up as either a Marine or an Army officer to be an effective chief of staff. So that was a pretty hard road, but I had General Brown's 100% support. They didn't go see him until they saw me first. And that's why I think General Brown said, yeah, they wanted to hate me. I'm not so sure they didn't, General Brown, just to set the record straight. But so the thought process early on, General Clark, was, how do you do all this? But luckily I had great support from SOCOM. I had support from the Marine Corps, not great, but I had a good functioning staff on both sides that wanted to do the right thing. And I'll let it go at that right now.
Hey, thank you, sir. Again, that was very insightful. And I think, probably one of the biggest challenges you had was that people thought, hey, you go to special ops now, you guys are going to quit being Marines. And I think this came from you, and it was one of your mottos, and it was, Marines are who we are, special operations is what we do. And I think that went a long ways in really trying to remind the Marine Corps that, hey, we're not going to lose, the Marine ethos that we came from, that we're still Marines, and special operations is our mission. And so anyway, I thought that was good. Next question I was going to ask you.
General Clark, let me interrupt, because you're exactly right. And that wasn't my idea, but it came from my staff. But General Brown, one of the things he told me, he goes, you have got to get on the road for the first 6 months to a year, and you've got to talk to all the KSOCs. You've got to go to all the components of SOCOM. You got to go to both MEF commanders. And if you can, get down to division commanders, the wing commanders, and our logistic commanders. So I did that, and that was very, very helpful. Again, that's the guidance I got from General Brown, which proved to be extremely helpful.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Next question I had, and I was going to ask General Hejlik this, but I think he's already addressed a lot of the challenges he had. But for General Brown, sir, what challenges did you have to deal with at your level? Did you have any challenges with DC? Did you have any challenges with the other soft components and things like that? Over.
Well, there were plenty of naysayers and people that didn't want to do it and wanted to throw logs in your way. I will tell you that if it hadn't been for support of Mike Hejlik, the Commandant, we would have never pulled this thing off. So, and of course, then you get the retired community that wants to tell you what a bad idea it is right away, and so I got a lot of advice from people, and one of the key things that people were very concerned about was that the MFP 11 budget is so small that at that time it was about $3 billion when I took command. And but it was so small that you put another component in there without additional money, and everyone will not have enough money to go around. And the truth was, and I watched the money pretty closely as I used to run the budget there. So the truth is that SOCOM in those first couple of years actually made money off the Marine Corps. We didn't lose money. They brought more than they needed with them into the MFP 11 pot. So things finally leveled out. But in the beginning, so the money was never an issue. You'll hear a lot of people even today say, well, we added them and the money got short. Not even close to true. That was never an issue. And then there's just the cultural thing. They didn't come in 1987. So now you're getting a lot of second guessing about, well, if they didn't come in then, why is it okay now? And but quite frankly, it was the right thing to do. And it is, I think today it is extremely positive to have components from each one of the services. And so you don't only get those forces, you get this cooperation with the service. You get all the values and benefits of the service that they bring with them. So I would tell you, the challenges were pretty significant in the early days. I was lucky to have General Halek, the Commandant called me, said he was thinking about who was going to command it. And what did I think of Hejlik? Well, he was the perfect guy because he'd already been the chief of staff. He understood the culture. He knew the people on the staff. He could go to any office. He could call them. He knew all that. And one real quick story, and then I'll get on with it, is the day we went to Camp Lejeune to unfurl the flags and stand up the MARSOC officially. I went with General Hejlik and, of course, the Secretary of Defense, Rumsfeld. When you do those things, you're always thinking about what your speech is going to be for standing up. This is a momentous day. And so, and what's your speech going to be? We'd all do it the same. Oh, two great forces coming together. It's time we do this. What a synergy. Humma. I didn't do that. At the last minute, I thought about it. I walked up to the podium and I said, General Hejlik, you'll raise 2,500 Marines. You'll assess them, select them. You'll train them, equip them, and prepare them for combat. You'll report to the commander of SOCOM, when they are combat ready and you're a combat ready unit. Do you understand your orders? General Hejlik said, yes, sir. After it was over, one of my Marine Corps buddies said, that sounded like you were scratching your fingernails down a chalkboard.
Thank you, General Braun. That was good. General Halek, I don't know if you had any more. You addressed some of the challenges that you had. Did you want to address any more of the challenges that you dealt with during the initial stand-up MARSOC?
The majority of it was cultural. I mean, people just didn't want to do it. It was, it's one of those things. Well, all Marines are special, and all Marines are unique, and all Marines are infantry. I mean, that's kind of been our mantra since 1775. So it was why do we have to do anything with SOCOM? We have to give up 25, eventually ended up 2,600 Marines, and we're giving up our force reconnaissance battalions, and we're giving up a lot of our logistical support, and we're giving up money, frankly, that we don't have. General Brown kind of chuckles about it, but when he made those comments at the stand-up on 24 February 2006, that actually helped me tremendously because the Meth Commander was there, General Amos, obviously the Commandant was there, and probably the most important guy was a guy named Lieutenant General Amo Gardner, who at the time was PNR, the money guy. So after that, he caught me at the reception. He goes, all right, Hejlik, how much money do you need? And so it made things a whole lot easier. So yeah, I'll take the scratching of the blackboard anytime. I would say the biggest issue that I had culturally early on was the Marine Corps did not want to give up Marines to go to MARSOC for more than 3 to 5 years. Okay, so we think about that. That is not cost effective. Your return on investment just isn't there. If you go to a business model, it just isn't. You can't take, I don't care if he's a force reconnaissance Marine or 18 X-ray, you can't make SOF, you can't hurry that along. So my argument all along was, if we can't keep them, in MARSOC to stay there like they do in reconnaissance battalion, force reconnaissance, then it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But the Marine Corps would not budge on that. It was 5 years. So what the manpower guy and I did, wonderful, wonderful guy, Lieutenant General Ron Coleman, we just kind of ignored that advice. We got caught every once in a while, but we kept them there until we basically got caught. And then, of course, as you all know, it changed. Droop, I don't know if that was during your time or Paul's or what, but that was probably the biggest issue, is just the people and giving them over to SOCOM, not to MARSOC, but to SOCOM, and they never get them back. So that was probably my biggest issue.
Yeah, thanks, sir. And a lot of what you just talked about really ties into the soft truths, about the human aspect and the training, and you can't create SOF overnight. And so you can't keep reinventing it every 3 years. And plus the relationships that you built or build within the SOF community, you just can't reinvent that every 3 years either. So great comments, sir. So the next question I have for you both, and starting with General Brown, then you, sir, is so knowing what you know now, would you have created a different kind of MARSOC today? And thing I think about, and we've talked about this before, sir, is MARSOC looks a lot like a Marine Air Ground Task Force minus aviation. So maybe that's a piece that we ought to look at. But anyway, I'll pause there for both of your comments.
Yeah, I don't think I would. I think that it's kind of like General Hejlik said, the unit will morph. It will become whatever it needs to be, whatever SOCOM, the Department of Defense, and the nation needs to be. It'll morph in to meet those requirements. All units do, but specifically SOF units do. And so I think getting it on, I think the hardest part was just getting it started. once we could get it started with its own momentum, it would move along, it would change, it would morph, it would add, just like all the units we've all been in forever will do. And that's what it did. So had I had to go back and do that, go through that same iteration today, I think I'd do it exactly the same. It was helpful that we started with the foreign military training teams, right? Because they were available, they were, quite frankly, easier to get our hands on. They were important for what we were trying to do right away. And so that gave us the impetus to kind of get it started. But I just want to reiterate one more time, because I've probably said it, but I'm going to say it again. If it had not been for Mike Hejlik, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and Donald Rumsfeld, there would not be a MARSOC, because those guys were incredibly supportive. And so I just want to make sure that people understand that.
Thank you, General Brown. General Halek, your thoughts on that?
You know, General Clark, I don't think I would have done it any differently. And General Brown's right. The more I worked with General Hejlik, I really didn't know him, and he didn't know me. You know, I was a fairly new brigadier when we stood up MARSOC. But the more I got to know him, and you know, remember the old Tandberg? I guess it's like Zoom is today. But I spent a lot of time with him on Tandberg, and he really did buckle down and give me the support that I needed, especially when it came to money and facilities. And you know, we had no support as far as logistical support. And he said, you got the permission to go to the MEF commander and get anything you need. And then, of course, it was Jim Amos, who ended up being a commandant of the Marine Corps, and he was really good that way. I don't think I'd do it any differently. I think, you know, the regiment came about pretty quickly. I think that was Masson Robinson who did that. The second command, if I remember correctly, General Clark. And even today, I'm not so sure I would have done that because every time you have a headquarters, it's overhead. I know they all have function, but it's still overhead. I probably would have pushed harder for a MAGTAF. MAGTAF, I mean the air piece of the MAGTAF. You know, like General Brown knows, it would have been expensive, but that's kind of been a sticking point. You know, MARSOC's been around almost 16 years now, and that's still a sticking point that's out there. But no, I think the proper thing was you take the foreign military training unit, they become your FID unit. That worked out extremely well for us. Plus what it did is General Brown said, I don't want you standing up a MARSOC company until they're ready to go to combat. So what that did is that really gave us almost a year to working with 1st and 2nd Force to get that first company ready to go to Afghanistan. So long story, long answer, but no, I would not have done it any differently.
Okay, thank you, sir. And I guess, you know, there's been some, even when I was the commander there at MARSOC, we had a lot of folks saying, you know, well, what's different about you all? You're duplicative to the SOF effort. You know, what's your value added to the SOF community? And so I guess my question to you both would be, you know, based on some of the articles, things that, you know, we see in news and things like that, you know, what would be your reply to the folks out there to say, you know, what is MARSOC's niche? You know, what do they bring different to the fight? Over. General Brown.
Well, the first thing I'd tell them that they are real SOF operators. And special operations forces are trained, organized, and equipped to perform the function that conventional forces are not trained, organized, and equipped to perform. And these are real SOF operators. They're not just Marines that have been moved over to a new unit. They've got unique skills, unique equipment. If you remember, when I commanded Special Operations Command, we were about 43,000 people. It's probably close to double that now. So they've grown the capacity to support special operations requirements around the world. You can't do that without building special operations forces. And my opinion, we built a real one. We built one that's a real special operations forces that can do all those functions that we need done in special operations. And so I would just tell them, you can get somebody to write anything you want them to write, as we all know. And so I think the proof is in the pudding. Look at how well they've operated around the world. Quite frankly, a lot of missions we probably even don't know about, hear about, read about, but they have performed incredibly in all their mission sets around the world. So I'd tell them the proof's in the pudding.
Hey, thank you, sir. Joe Hejlik, sir.
I think the first thing is, for the critics, I'm sorry, I go back to Teddy Roosevelt. It's not the critic who counts. The credit belongs to the man in the arena who through his blood, sweat, and tears, et cetera, et cetera. And you guys have all heard that before. So critics, to me, unless it's constructive, I don't really pay any attention to. I think with General Brown, he to me said it all. General Brown told me, and I don't think he remembers this, he was the commander at the time, and Admiral Olson, Eric Olson, was the deputy, and we're sitting there, and I don't even know what the event was, but it's just General Brown and I, and he goes, hey, Danny, I predict that in the next 10 years that, MARSOC will be the force of choice on the battlefield for SOF. Well, I think he got it wrong. It was more like 6 to 7 years. But it's a complementary force. It's not, you hear this thing all the time about redundant, they're redundant to SF, they're redundant to AFSOC guys, to the PJs, they're redundant to the SEALs. They are not. They're a complementary force. You heard General Brown talk a little bit about that he was short 20-odd A's. Well, I don't know how, what their deployment schedule looks like today, but I can assure you it's probably not much better than it was back in 2000 and 2005 and 2006. I guess my proudest moment is when you go to MARSOC and it looks really nothing like it was when we first stood up. The capability that they have, especially when it comes to their C4I, if you will. My God, it just makes your ears water. And some of this, your ears water. It does make your ears water when you listen to this stuff. But when you see the capability that they have and how they work 100% soft. I think it was, I don't know if it was you, General Brown, or if it was Admiral Olson, they all used to say, we're only 75% joint. When MARSOC came aboard, now we're 100% joint soft. And that's the truth. So, yeah, I was very proud to be the first commander, but they have morphed so far ahead of where we thought they would be in 10 years. They're just a great addition to the SOCOM community, and SOCOM obviously supported them throughout. And, I always used to tell Marines who are critical about, well, you really belong to the Marine Corps. I go, nope. I don't know if you've read it or not, but, I'm COCOM to SOCOM, and that's just the way it is. So, yeah, they're great. So thanks.
No, thank you, sir. It was interesting. I was chief of staff for Admiral McCraven. I was just getting ready to leave and go report into MARSOC, and we're just kind of sitting around the table, and I asked him, I go, hey boss, you're hearing some of the rumblings out there about MARSOC and things like that, and what do you think our niche is? And he goes, hey Droop, that's easy. Your niche is that you're Marines. You bring that Marine ethos to the SOF community, and that's your niche. So I found that to be a very interesting, profound statement from Admiral McCraven. So that's really the end of the guided questions. I imagine we've got some questions rolling up on for Chelsea to dole out to you both. But I wanted to thank you both really for your time and your commitment to doing this, because I think this really, in my opinion, is a one-of-a-kind event where we've had two leaders like you who are so instrumental in an organization like MARSOC and your roles in the SOF community. This has been, I think, a very enlightening event for the SOF community and all the audience out there. And it's been an honor to be part of this discussion with you both. So I want to thank you both for doing this today.
Yes, thank you very much. We have one question from the audience so far. It is, what was the first moment where you really felt like MARSOC was a success and it was worth all of the effort that you put into it?
Okay, well, I can tell you for me is that before we ever deployed them to the battlefields of Afghanistan and Iraq, we put together a team of half Special Forces guys and half MARSOC operators and sent them to do a FID mission, Foreign Military Training Mission in Colombia. And then I flew down and spent about a day with them. And I can tell you, I have never seen a FID mission more perfectly executed than when you put those two teams of Green Berets and MARSOC operators together, with Raiders and Green Berets together. I'll tell you, when I came home after that, I looked at the Sergeant Major and said, yep, we've done something good here. This is really working well. These guys are impressive.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, for me, it was two events, Chelsea. The first one was when both commanders, the first and second MSOB and third MSOB, which obviously morphed from FMTU into third MSOB, when we were sitting there about a year into it, and all three commanders said, you know what, sir, this was a great idea. I don't know why we didn't do this back in 1987. So to get those, lieutenant colonels on board when we had gotten so much pushback before, that to me was number one. The other one was similar to General Brown. I was in Kenya, Chad, Senegal, visiting the teams out there, the FID teams, and the same thing. When you watch these young Marines and these young Rangers and the SODAs all working together, and there's always a rep at the embassy. We all know that from SOCOM. I then knew that, MARSOC was not going to go away. MARSOC now was a full partner in SOF and SOCOM.
Thank you. We do have a few other comments from folks just saying thank you for the interesting and informative talk, even some from the UK. So we're hitting a global audience. Thank you both very much, and back to you, General Clark.
Well, gentlemen, as promised, I wanted to give you both an opportunity to kind of do some closing comments and kind of bring this all together. And so over to you, General Hejlik, and then to you, General Brown.
Thanks, General Clark. First of all, again, thanks very much to you all, the SOF Foundation, for setting this up, because I think is really is important that people understood, how MARSOC stood up, where it came from all the way back to 1987, and what the process was to getting there to February 24th of 2006. I think that's extremely important. I've talked to a couple of people at MARSOC, and that history hasn't been totally captured yet, and it needs to. So, General Clark, I don't know if this goes to MARSOC or not, or if they have access to it, but I think it'd be a great idea if they did.
I sent the commander an invite to this, so they got the link, and I recommended that their historian put this in their files.
Thanks. I would say, in closing, there's really few people that I have to thank. First and foremost would be General Brown, because I think without General Brown and General Hejlik, but I wasn't privy to that side of it. I was privy to the General Brown side. You wouldn't have a MARSOC. So first of all, the thanks, for Marine Corps Special Operations Command goes to General Brown, and then of course the other guy that was such a huge support as went along was Eric Olson, and then to General Hejlik. Because the smarter I got, the smarter he was. And that's really a compliment, because he was there all along. I think it was just, he was watching the way I was doing things. So, the thanks to him. And then the other part is, I think what a lot of people miss, and General Clark, you don't, because you've done that, both with AFSOC and with SOCOM, is it makes you a better Marine, period. And it makes you a better Marine general when you're working with someone in the joint community, but especially someone like Special Operations Command, because you see how you interoperate. You see how you know, the old words orchestrate, synchronize, all those buzzwords that are out there. Well, they're true. You know, when I look at how I was formed as a general officer, there's people out there on the SOCOM and the Marine side, Doug Brown, Eric Olson, Joe McGuire, Donnie Wooster, Jim Parker, Bob Wagner, you know, Holland, Stan McChrystal, Bill McCraven. I mean, it can't help but make you a better general officer. So a lot of thanks to those guys. But first and foremost, the credit for where MARSOC goes today has nothing to do with the commanders. It has to do with the Marines and the sailors that are, you know, on the ground. They're in the arena, if you will, with their blood, sweat, and tears. That's where all the credit goes, because the commander is just someone who holds it for a while and passes the, you know, the colors on to someone else. So that's my closing comments. Again, you guys, thanks very much for doing this.
Hey, thanks, Droopy, and thanks for doing this for us and being a moderator. And it's great to have two great MARSOC commanders here today. Hey, I'll be quick because we're pretty well at the end of our time. I'd just say that the MARSOC today is not the new guys in SOF. They've earned their spurs. They've deployed hundreds of times. They are now a full integrated member. You would not think of SOCOM without a MARSOC anymore. And I would tell you, they've been a great success. We all should be real proud of those Marines out on the battlefield. They suffered casualties. They've performed incredible missions. So one of the things I can look back on my time when I was in SOCOM that I would rate as a great success is our ability to have the great people stand up the Marine Corps Special Operations Command. It was a great idea and it's a great success. And my closing comment is, other than thank you guys for doing this, is that someday, before long, there will be a commanding general of SOCOM that is a U.S. Marine Corps general. So thanks for doing this.
Gentlemen, that was amazing. Seriously, I have never heard any of this before. And not only was it a great story, but it was a great peek behind the curtain and kind of an awesome illustration of what actually happens with the general officers at the strategic level. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that think it's just all parties picking in the air and inspections. But well done, gentlemen. You guys more than earned your pay. So, I love the point that you both, well, all three of you made about maintaining the Marine ethos and what each service kind of brings to the fight in the USSOCOM. Because I too believe that the best decision they made was not making SOF a service. I think the number one strength of USSOCOM is their joint nature and what each service actually brings to the SOCOM ethos. And again, General Hejlik, I agree 100%. When I was at SOCOM, I always liked having a Marine Chief of Staff. I've always had a soft spot in my in my heart for Marines. And my uncle was one of my early mentors. He was a three-war Marine, but the discipline and the organizational skills that Marines have inherently that they bring to the table, it makes that command hum. So I'm 100% behind that. So again, I just want to thank you, gentlemen, for all you've done, for all you continue to do for the force. And I would like to ask you guys to join me in a moment of silence for all the Special Operations Forces that we've lost over the last several decades. Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. And I know every one of you gentlemen sent men and women into harm's way, and some of them did not return. I've talked to some of you guys, and I know that it weighs heavy on you. So it's said that you die twice. The first time is when your heart stops beating. The second time is when people no longer say your name. So during this moment of silence, please remember one name of someone that we've lost, and then repeat that name to yourself over and over again. I'd also ask the audience to do the same. So I think if we repeat their name, it brings them back to life, if only for a moment. And may they rest in peace. So thank you again for joining us on Soft Stories Live. We're in our post-COVID format now, which means we're traveling and we're executing events. And Soft Stories Live is now a quarterly occurrence. So please go to www.gsof.org, click on the events tab, and come join us in person. Or join us virtually in September as we explore another chapter in SOF history told by the warriors who lived it on Soft Stories Live. So Deo Presso Liber, thank you much, gentlemen. This is Lamb out.